Williams in the Ford Escort, sponsored, oddly enough, it says, by an equestrian centre. So 4 hooves or 4 wheels. It seems Nick Coombs doesn't mind either way. He's there in the middle of the front row, or the second position on the front row, I should say. The anonymous number 99 comes alongside, and I think that if we look up our previous entry on that, we may well find out who that is. It's Steve Mitchell, in fact. Number 6 gets away very quickly though, Mark Howard in the BMW. This man is getting a little bit quicker each meeting, and he's starting to worry the Escorts now. They're having to work hard to get up there with him.
Yes, and it's number 6 who goes straight away into the lead, Mark Howard. There was a slight delay at the start of that race whilst Mark tied the bonnet down of his BMW, but in fact number 10 now goes into the lead, Simon Tyrrell. And someone goes off, number 71 it is, Nick Coombs, straight off as they tried to negotiate Chessons and back onto the tarmac.
Right, it's Simon Tyrrell, Mark Howard, Dave Bean and Steve Mitchell in that order as they come round to complete 2/3 of their first lap. 3 Ford Escorts, 1 BMW fighting it out, and it looks pretty much like anyone's race at the moment. Simon Tyrrell using as much power as he's got in reserve to try and stay in front of that little gang of 3 behind him, because Dave Bean has already moved through into second place.
Do they have any in reserve, Paul?
Not an awful lot probably, but in actual fact the old 2-litre Ford engine does develop somewhere around the 100 brake horsepower mark, even in standard form. Not too much of that ends up on the wheels though. Steve Mitchell elbows his way through on the inside, but of course having standard suspension and, as I said earlier on, with a standard differential, which means that one inside wheel tends to spin rather a lot, they make the best use they possibly can of that 100 or so brake horsepower, or approximately a quarter of what somebody like Will Gollop has got to play with. Anyway, Simon Tyrrell now under attack from Dave Bean. Dave looks pretty determined to try and wrap this one up.
Yes, and this is almost a repeat of the previous race that these two had, where in fact Dave Bean did manage to take the lead from Simon Tyrrell. We'll have to see if he can do it again. Last time he did it down at Chessons Drift. That's half a lap away from now, so we'll have to see if that's where he's going to try and do it again.
Up the hill, still Tyrrell and Bean fighting over that lead. It would be a bit of a disappointment, I think, for Dave Bean if he fails to win the final this time out. But he's had his fair share so far. Looking back to the previous meeting, in fact, he was the winner then. Simon Tyrrell had a pretty duff meeting, I think, last time out. Prior to that, Dave Bean was 3rd in the first round of the series, so his results have been getting pretty good. He could do with a win this time out. Simon Tyrrell can't be too far behind on points, but it's Tyrrell who leads the race at the moment in number 10.
Yes, and Tyrrell getting it all wrong as they go on to Chessons Drift. That allows Bean to close right up. I don't think he's close enough to take the lead unless he's got a very good line through it, and having said that, he comes charging through but slides wide up the bank. I think he's got it though. He had the momentum to get through. He did indeed. He managed to hold it all together, and once again it's Dave Bean taking the lead from Simon Tyrrell as they go down Chessons.
Well, Tyrrell must have worried himself somewhat there. He lost concentration because when he braked to go into Chessons, the back of the car broke away and he went all over the track. He's doing it again there. He's obviously got some problems, and Dave Bean made the most of that and took a very tidy line around the outside, a bit chancy, but he came out of it okay and took the lead. Anyway, Simon Tyrrell now getting himself back in gear and putting the pressure back on.
Yes, I did wonder for a moment there, Paul, if Simon Tyrrell's front suspension was damaged at all, because the car does seem to dip rather a lot as he goes to brake and as he throws it into the corners. We haven't seen him sliding this much in the previous heats, so I'm not sure it's bouncing well over the rough there, and that is where in fact sometimes these cars do suffer suspension damage.
Yeah, and they are running on standard suspension struts. I remember years ago competing with a Ford 100E, would you believe, the old side valve machine, and finding after one particularly rough event that I had a suspension strut that was in 3 or 4 separate pieces, and that did affect, whoops, poor old Simon Tyrrell immediately feels the effect of whatever he's got wrong by promptly backing into a snowdrift on the infield. Dave Bean takes the win, and most convincingly this time he lost all the pressure that he had right at the end there, with the second place now going to Steve Mitchell in car 99, and I think in third it's going to be a third place for Mark Howard, number 6.